As head of design, or senior designer, I kind of use both titles really, but the key thing is to inspire people and to enable people to do their job well around you. So I think it's multifaceted. So, but the key message is, inspire the others around you. But in my position, different to when I first started out as just as a junior designer, now I need to look at the product strategy, the brand DNA, what the brand DNA can be or should be because of the Formula One tie-in. But you've got to be outward looking to the rest of the company. You can't be purely selfish and think, okay, this car needs to be just this. With it being a McLaren, it's got this extra layer as a product. It's not just it looks cool. It needs to be functional, so you need to make sure you choose the right materials that suit the purpose of the job that functional area is doing on the car. But the main thing, again, the marketing, the conceptual side, the strategic side, new product opportunities, sort of feeding that through to the rest of the team, so that then they can sort of take this thread of the DNA and input it into all the new sketches and new designs. And then everyone gets this kind of family feel, and you start to get, okay, we know what would a boat look like if it was a McLaren, what would a motorbike be? But you need to be able to tell it's a McLaren, even if it was a knife and fork, piece of furniture. You should be able to apply our philosophy to that. So really my job is to relay that message around the whole team and make sure they've got the tools they need to do the job, and then day to day talk to the designers, work on the sketches, on the proportions, be outward looking to the rest of the company and make sure that we don't propose things that aren't possible. You need to propose things that are cutting edge, look like concept cars, but you can make them, and that's the key. We can't just repeat what other companies have done over the last 50, 60 years. Supercars have done fast for decades. We need to kind of new on the block, so we need to do everything for a reason, which is kind of one of our mantras. But the car needs to tell the story. We're looking for this new visual narrative for the car. It needs to, as you walk around the car as a customer, you need to be able to work out the way the air flows over the vehicle, and it tells its own aerodynamic story. I think the aspects of the design that take longer to develop on McLarens are, well, you've got from the vehicle architecture side, they obviously have to be done years in advance. We need to obviously planning and looking forward to what the future opportunities are and what the brand needs to be able to do and how it can grow in the future, how we stretch the brand. So we've got the core values, the secondary values and the tertiary values, and how they spread out and which products can stretch and which ones should obviously need to stay pure to what the core is. So the architecture is something that's been constantly worked on. But the other thing that probably takes the longest time is the aerodynamics, because you do the sketches and we'll go into the clay and we'll do some early cast surfaces. Then we need to feed those surfaces over to the aero guys, and once they get those, they can do some computational fluid dynamics. But beyond that point, they really need to get into the physical side. So we go at risk through the early part of the project. Because the computer's obviously never as good as reality, so we go to a point and we know that we're working within a bandwidth which is we can deliver, so we have a level of safety. But beyond that, when you get into the real world, inevitably certain things change, and it's how the risk is, or the aspect that takes longer due to its risk to develop, is then the loops with the aerodynamics, whether it's the thermal, because our cars we're using turbochargers to generate a lot of heat. It's how do you cool this engine? So we've got lots of openings on the car and all meshes, and obviously sometimes you need the car to look nice, clean and sleek. Other products need to be more open to visually communicate the power, the kind of lightweightness. So it's trying to look for those different tricks. Anyway, this feedback with aero, sometimes it can be the diffuser completely needs to change shape because they're not there for just aesthetical reasons. On a McLaren, obviously, they need to create like 300 kilos of downforce or 150 kilos of downforce, whether that's the front diffusers or the rear diffusers. But certainly, the challenge is yeah, just the heat exit over the engines and out at the back of the car, which on P1 you can see, which is why it's got this kind of completely chopped away rear end with the mesh. Very open, very Le Mans-like, but fluid in its silhouette, which was very McLaren, very Formula One. But they are, yeah. So aerodynamics is the key. Is the one with the longest. The inspiration for the P1 and the 650S, well, they were clearly two different cars. 650 was based upon what was the 12C, and the P1 was an all-new carbon tub, etc., or modified tub. So with the P1, first of all, I think the key there was to really start to forge this brand identity, a surface language. So as we were saying earlier, the surface language can't be just it's trendy, it's cool, it's the new thing. It had to be, okay, it communicates what the Formula One cars have done. So in a broad brush sense, it was inspired by Formula One, in the sense of shrink wrapping, choosing the correct sections and radii to steer the air around the car. From a mood board point of view, which maybe some people are familiar with that phrase, it's kind of, we would have images of sharks, manta rays, stingrays, fish, sailfish. So Frank got a full-size sailfish shipped in from Miami, full of drugs probably, and that's up on the wall in the studio. And that, to try and communicate this message of biomimicry, so looking at bone structures, taking weight out. The P1 definitely has, through the door, communicates this idea of layering and skeletal, so the door, the tendon across the door, and the graphics and the way the sill's been hollowed out. So when you open the door, you can see down inside the door sill. But yeah, biomimicry, layering, and the idea of when you layer, it implies the material's been removed from underneath. It implies it's lean, it's light. So to the consumer, again, not only does it allow us to pass air underneath and have hidden ducting, but when you get close to the car, you can see it's like an athlete, it's been trimmed up, it's lean. For the 650, that kind of has a different story. I wasn't involved with the 12C originally, but when 650 came along, the idea for that one was to take some of the work we'd done on the P1 and then start to introduce it onto that vehicle. So with all the technical upgrades, it's basically like a different car, it's like a new car. But visually, we had certain restrictions, certain panels we carried over, but the idea was to start to get the family face on the front and on the rear as well. The idea of the open area, the Le Mans inspired meshes, and get all that hot air out the back. It was really just to tie that thread across from P1. You look at supercar design over the last 50 or 60 years, where Porsche and Aston Martin have had very beautiful cars, clean fuselage, body sides. For McLaren, as a new kid on the block, it wasn't just to be different for different's sake, but it was really to find the reasons behind the differences, so the form of the car tells the story of its function, the same way as the Formula One cars do. You can see where the air is divided, where the air goes into a scoop, different radii to attach the air or separate the air. It has its own intrinsic language which you can understand without anybody actually walking you around the car if you take the time to look at it. And that's what we look for the road cars to do. They need to do that job. They need to, in the showroom, if there was no salesman there, the idea is, and the target is, as a customer, you can walk around the car and you can work out. The air goes in here, it goes through the hidden duct on the sill. It's like a live, living thing. It's like biomimicry. It's like the arteries, the airways of the car, and we just happen to have packaged some people inside and the engine. We see it as a living thing, the active aerodynamics. You can see in the future, the target is clearly like transformer cars, cars that adapt and adjust to the requirements of the racetrack or the road. It gives you the optimum in every situation. McLaren is definitely about breadth of ability across all the products. Certainly in each individual class or segment, we need to be the fastest around the track. We need to be the most adaptable in terms of everyday usage. And obviously, correct materials for the correct function. Traditionally in car design you look for what the latest trend is, whether it's through the pressing of the materials. You may be able to get very sharp creases nowadays, but for us we don't need to do that. We do a sharp crease where we need it to separate the air, not a sharp crease because it shows we've got the latest stamping technology. We do what's correct for the function of the vehicle. And what's really interesting here as a designer, as a challenge, is when you have to mix the two together. So a fender line or a body side line is not there just purely for proportional reasons. It also has to serve a double function. So the second function is that line has to split the air in a certain way, or it divides the air. It helps tell the story of the airflow so the customer can see it. Yeah, and that's where we stand out against the competition. I think it's all cars are intelligently designed, but I think it's the way it tells the story, how the vehicle tells the story, and I think that's really apparent in P1 and certainly in all the future cars as well. Thoughts on self-driving cars and how the next 5-10 years of transportation will go. But I think self-driving, it'll happen if there's a need for it. Just purely in the UK, Tokyo, places are super congested. It makes a lot of sense if you can get the traffic to flow with precision, free up more road space. Why not? In the city, you're not going to be racing your car. So I think it will happen, maybe not in the next 5 or 10 years. I think the infrastructure will take a lot longer to build up. But how that applies to McLaren, honestly at the moment I can't see a place for that. McLaren, it's about the driving experience, about the fun, it's about the engagement, the interaction with the car. It's that feedback which makes the car exciting, kind of the seat of your pants, the buzz, the thrill. So we can't lose that. If there's a way of doing something with a McLaren in a city, but it allows you still to drive good across country roads and the motorways or take it to the track, then that's something that needs to be worked out. Personally, I think it would be a shame if all cars were forced to go down a route of being self-driving. Again, you take the fun side out, and to me that's why we all kind of fell in love with cars in the first place. That first time you sit on your dad's knee and you kind of steering having a go on the steering wheel down the road, trying not to crash. But it's just the fun, that kind of passion side of it could be lost. It just becomes like travelling in a personal train, personal carriage, which may suit some people but not everybody. So.